please sign this?" When I looked at the paper, I was shocked. "Wait, what is this?" Without faltering, Chris handed me the divorce papers. "It's clear if you look at this paper, isn't it? I want a divorce. Why all of a sudden?" "It's not sudden. I've been thinking about this for a long time. In fact, I have someone else I love, and she's pregnant with my child." "What?" It was out of the blue. I was so shocked that I just stood there speechless. "Our marriage has been over for a long time, hasn't it?" Indeed, things hadn't been going well between us recently, but to have an affair and a child. "Wait, I just gave birth and was discharged from the hospital? We were supposed to be happy together from now on." That day was the very day I had returned from the hospital after giving birth. We were supposed to live happily as a family with our newborn. Why did this happen? I hesitated about telling you today since you just got out of the hospital, but I think it's better to tell you sooner. Besides, she's pushing me to get a divorce soon. Chris said this with a smirk. His eyes were no longer looking towards a future with our family. I was shocked at his betrayal and burst into tears. I thought, what should I do? But he unilaterally notified me of the divorce, and we separated. 5 years have passed since then. One day, at a big shopping mall, I ran into the worst person I knew, my ex. He said, "Oh, Diana, isn't it? It's been a while." I heard the voice of my ex-husband. He was the #1 person I did not want to encounter. I gasped in surprise. "What's with that reaction?" "You've aged, haven't you? By the way, how have you been since the divorce? It must have been tough being a single mother." He started talking as if he were a stranger. His words were shockingly insensitive. "You abandoned us, didn't you?" While suppressing the anger welling up inside me, I retorted sarcastically. "I had the support of my family, so there was no problem at all without you. Why are you pretending to be strong? Your father, that small-town doctor, right? You couldn't have relied on such parents," Chris laughed. And while I remained silent, he began to boast about his own recent circumstances. "I got married to a female doctor afterward. She's incomparably better than a part-timer like you. My wife is competent, and she's 10 years younger than me. I live a rich and stable life. Jealous? Sorry, I'm the only one happy here." Chris spoke with an oppressive attitude, bursting into a large and rude laugh. "Oh, which hospital does your wife work at? Interested? Richardson Hospital. It's a famous medical center that just opened recently." "You worked at a hospital too, right? You must have heard the name." "Richardson Hospital, haha." I couldn't help but smile at my ex-husband's confident speech, because that hospital is a place very familiar to me. Fate really is ironic, isn't it? Yes, I know that hospital well. Because when my ex-husband heard the truth, his face suddenly changed. "My name is Diana. My father runs a small clinic beloved by the local community, and my mother worked there as the office manager. As a doctor, my father had extremely busy days, working almost without rest for the patients who needed him. As a child, I often felt lonely due to the limited time I could spend with my family, but my admiration and respect for my father were strong. I always harbored the desire to become someone who could help many people, just like him. As an adult, I chose not to become a doctor but a nurse instead. The job of a nurse was more physically and mentally demanding than I had anticipated, and I often questioned whether I could continue in this profession for the long term. I frequently doubted whether I could build a distinguished career like the one my father had, and I struggled with anxiety and impatience. Then, a significant turning point occurred in my life. It was when I met Chris, who would later become my husband. Chris was 5 years older than me and owned a cafe near the hospital where I worked. His cafe became a place of solace for me, and during lunchtime, I would often sit at the same table, sipping coffee and brooding alone. Seeing me distressed, Chris approached me one day. "Hey, I don't know what's got you down, but drink this and cheer up a bit," he said, offering me a coffee adorned with a cute rabbit cafe art. That cup of coffee sparked new conversations between us and gradually became an opportunity for me to open up. "Here," Chris said with a smile as he handed it to me. "This one's on the house." "Come on, smile," he said with a radiant smile. His warm gesture naturally brought a smile to my face. Chris's bright and positive attitude gradually captured my heart. As I visited the cafe more often, my feelings for Chris deepened, and I felt an increasing attraction to him. About 3 months after our first meeting, I mustered the courage to ask for his contact information. He happily agreed, and from there we started dating seriously. 2 years into our relationship, Chris proposed to me. In front of my parents, he confidently declared, "I will definitely make Diana happy, so please rest assured." Moved by his sincere demeanor, I fell for him all over again and felt a deep love. My parents were also touched by Chris's earnestness and expressed their gratitude. "Thank you, please take good care of our daughter," and wholeheartedly blessed our marriage. Overwhelmed with emotion, they said, "Be happy. We're supporting you." As part of our wedding preparations, when we visited Chris's parents, they said, "Chris might be a bit unreliable, but please look after him," and gave us encouraging words. "If there's ever anything, just contact us, and we'll scold him." During our first meeting with Chris's parents, I was relieved to find them very approachable and easy to talk to. After the official greetings between both families, we had our wedding and started a joyful and fulfilling married life. Married life did come with its small grievances and difficulties, but each time we overcame them, our bond strengthened, and the happiness we felt day by day was immeasurable. Then, 2 years into our marriage, my husband made a surprising proposal. "Why don't we make your dream come true?" Chris suddenly said. "My dream? What do you mean?" I asked in surprise. "To build our own house, remember," he replied with a smile. "Really? You remembered that?" I exclaimed in surprise. "Of course. I couldn't possibly forget," he said confidently. I had mentioned wanting to build a house during a casual conversation when we were still dating. I was moved and very happy that he had remembered such a minor detail. "Thank you, Chris," I said, expressing my heartfelt thanks. Afterward, we went to a real estate agency and decided to look at various properties. Visiting the housing exhibition was a fun experience in itself. "Wow, look at this. This kitchen is fantastic." I pointed at a modern peninsula kitchen. The idea of cooking in such a spacious kitchen one day excited me. "Indeed, it's wonderful. Cooking in a kitchen like this would be fun. Diana, check out this bathroom too. Isn't it nice? It's so spacious you could relax and enjoy bath time every day," Chris said excitedly. As we joyfully viewed different properties, we expanded our dreams about our future home. We continued to visit properties on weekends, enjoying the time spent together discussing what kind of house we liked and admiring different styles. At the exhibition, we saw houses with various designs and features, discussing the pros and cons of each. While visiting the exhibition, we solidified our image of our ideal home. At one exhibition, we found a house with eco-friendly design features that fascinated us with its ecological considerations. At another, we saw a house equipped with the latest smart home technology and were impressed by its advanced features. "It would be truly wonderful to live in such a house," I exclaimed. "Yes, but realistically, We need to decide which features to prioritize, Chris responded calmly. We meticulously evaluated the features of each house, striving to find the one that best suited our lifestyle. This process was sometimes challenging and filled with indecision, but the time we spent discussing it together was precious and enjoyable. Thus, we continued our discussions to find our ideal home. The time we spent together increased, and as we respected each other's opinions, we continued to dream about our future home. However, the discussion about building the house took an unexpected turn. One holiday, when we narrowed down some criteria and visited the housing exhibition again, surprisingly, we found my mother-in-law there. "Why are you here?" I asked. Her response was unexpected. "Why? Because I'll be living in the same house too. When building, it's good to include my opinions for cohabitation, right?" "What?" I couldn't hide my surprise. When had this been decided? Chris had never mentioned living together with his mother. I quietly asked Chris, out of earshot of his mother, "Chris, what's this all about? I hadn't heard anything about your mother living with us." "Oh, did I not mention it?" "What?" "Last year, after my father passed away from a heart attack, my mother seemed very lonely. I couldn't overlook that. Indeed, Chris's father had passed away unexpectedly last year. It was very sudden. Chris's parents were very close, and they would always hold hands when going out somewhere on weekends. I always felt comforted watching them. After Chris's father passed away, his mother was devastated, and we were worried, but we never thought she was actually considering living with us. I understand your feelings, but about that, I didn't have a good impression of living together and was worried whether it would work out. However, I couldn't just abandon her. What should we do? In the silence, perhaps regretting that he hadn't consulted me, Chris apologized. "I'm really sorry. Anyway, my mother is happy to hear about living together, so please accept it," he said, pointing to his mother. She was admiring the modern kitchen and bathroom, walking through the exhibition saying, "This is nice," with sparkling eyes. Seeing her enjoy herself for the first time in a long time made me smile happily too. Our relationship with her was good, and I felt if it makes her a bit happier, then it's okay. Thus, our house planning meetings progressed, and eventually our dream house took shape. Initially, she often stayed in her room, looking at pictures of her late husband and sometimes shedding tears. But life in the new house seemed comfortable for her, and gradually, she began to spend more time in the shared spaces. Initially, I was tired from being overly considerate of her, but as time passed, I found a suitable distance, and I think both of us were living comfortably. However, at one time, a casual remark from Chris created a tense atmosphere. "I think it's about time we had a child," Chris said, causing both his mother and me to exchange surprised looks. "Surprised?" I said. "We don't need to talk about that now," while lightly tapping Chris's leg to urge him to drop the subject. However, my discomfort did not get through to my insensitive husband. "But you know, we've been married for 2 years now, and Mom also wants a grandchild," he said jokingly to his mother. "Yes, of course," she replied, glancing at me with a bit of confusion. "I do want children, but there's no need to discuss it while she is here. Having children is a blessing from heaven, and it doesn't happen immediately. I do want children, but it's a blessing that doesn't just happen overnight, right?" I explained calmly, but my husband responded insensitively again. "What? It's normally easy. Let's start trying for a baby from tomorrow," I sighed. A few days after my husband's insensitive remark, my mother-in-law became completely fixated on the idea of having a grandchild and started asking about children frequently. How have you been feeling lately? Are you okay? And I prepared oysters especially for you today. Eat up and get your strength up. They're good for vitality. It became clear that not only my husband but also my mother-in-law lacked consideration. She began to pressure me more about getting pregnant. The path to pregnancy can be difficult, and it often doesn't happen right away. Months passed without any signs of pregnancy. Another year went by, and our relationship became increasingly strained. "Why aren't you pregnant yet? Is there something wrong?" my husband would accuse, while I retorted, "Don't blame it all on me. The problem might be with you." This led to frequent conflicts between us. Furthermore, when my mother-in-law added, "Diana, your sensitivity to cold could be affecting it. You need to keep warmer," I reached my breaking point. Trying to improve the situation, I suggested to my husband, "Hey, this trying for a baby is causing a lot of stress. What about trying fertility treatments? Let's get tested together." It seemed my husband felt something too because he agreed. "That sounds good. Let's try it." The following week, we went for a checkup at a fertility treatment center. A few days later, we both received an unexpected diagnosis: no abnormalities. Next, we decided to check my ovulation days and try at the appropriate times. Once the diagnosis was out, it was clear there was no issue on my part, and neither my husband nor my mother-in-law could blame me anymore. I felt relieved to have gotten tested. The results lessened my mental burden, and 2 months later, a delayed period led to the discovery of my pregnancy. When my mother-in-law heard the news of the pregnancy, she was very pleased and said, "Rest assured, I'll take care of everything at home. Take it easy and have a healthy baby." She became even more proactive in helping around the house. The change was not only in my mother-in-law but also in my husband, though, unfortunately, his change was in a negative direction. At first, my husband was happy about the pregnancy, but gradually he became colder towards me, voicing financial worries. "We have loans, and without you working, we won't have enough money." As a former nurse, I had a good income, but entering maternity leave meant a decrease in earnings. I considered delaying maternity leave, but my mother-in-law advised, "It's a physically demanding job, and we can't risk anything happening. You should rest earlier." So I decided to start my leave early. My husband seemed unhappy with this decision, grumbling, "You could have worked a bit longer. You're taking maternity leave too early. There's nothing I can do about it. Your mother is worried, and we can manage on your income alone," I replied. But he retorted angrily, "It must be nice being a woman, pushing all the work onto the man once you get pregnant." When morning sickness began, he would complain as I rushed to the bathroom, feeling sick again. It's really troublesome. It seemed that, for him, achieving the goal of pregnancy was enough, and he had little interest in what came after. The mental pressure in this situation was immense, and I often spent my days crying after he went to work. Seeing my distress, my mother-in-law kindly suggested, "Why don't you go back to your parents' house until you feel a bit calmer?" Sometimes taking some distance can help improve things. She shared that during her own pregnancy, hormonal changes often led to conflicts with her husband, and she found relief and a peaceful environment for childbirth by temporarily returning to her parents' home. Hearing this, I felt it might be wise to take some distance too. 4 months into the pregnancy, I decided to go back to my parents' home following my mother-in-law's advice. With the distance from my husband and active support from my parents, I was able to spend my maternity life peacefully. Having my father, who was a doctor, nearby also brought me a great sense of relief. Meanwhile, while I was at my parents' house, my husband seemed to relish his freedom, staying out late, and sometimes not returning home at all, as I learned from my mother-in-law. He never came to see me while I was at my parents' house, and we barely communicated. Feeling anger towards him was a natural response. The slight disagreements that had started before I left gradually escalated. As I approached full term, I asked my husband if he would be present at the birth. However, he quickly declined. "What? No way I can attend. I can't stand the sight of blood." His response left me feeling more disappointed than angry. When labor began, my parents took me to the hospital, and I was fortunate to give birth to a beautiful baby girl safely. A week later, both me and my child were healthy enough to be discharged, and from that day, I decided to return to the home where my mother-in-law and husband were. The house, which I had been away from for a long time, emitted a subtly different atmosphere than before. Thank you so much for taking care of the house for so long. Welcome back, and congratulations on your delivery. From now on, I'll take care of all the household chores, so you just rest," my mother-in-law said with a slightly sad expression. While I felt truly grateful for her words, I was a bit perplexed by her unusual demeanor. With these feelings, I sat on the living room sofa, holding my daughter. That night, even as the clock struck 10 p.m., there was no sign of my husband's return. Thinking of my child, I sincerely hoped for an improvement in our relationship, although it seemed my husband had no such intentions. "I'm going to bed now. It seems like Chris will be late again tonight because of work. You've just been discharged and must be tired, right? You should rest early too," my mother-in-law said. Her voice carried a profound loneliness, and then she weakly retreated to her room. Shortly after midnight, it sounded like my husband finally came home, as I heard the front door quietly open. "I'm home," he muttered tiredly, and quickly headed upstairs to the bedroom. "Welcome back. You're late today. Our daughter is already asleep, so please be quiet," I said to my husband. He glanced at me and replied grumpily, "Coming home after a long time and already nagging, huh? There's nothing I can do about it, I've just put her to sleep," I responded, and he, looking even more displeased, said, "Well, whatever. I have something to tell you." Following that, he rummaged through his bag and eventually pulled out a piece of paper, handing it to me. "Sign this." I was shocked when I saw the paper. "Wait, what is this?" Unfazed, my husband handed me a divorce petition. "It's clear if you look at this paper, isn't it? I want a divorce. Why all of a sudden?" "It's not sudden. I've been thinking about this for a long time. In fact, I have someone else I love, and she's pregnant with my child." "What?" It was out of the blue. I was so shocked that I just stood there speechless. Our marriage has been over for a long time, hasn't it? Indeed, things hadn't been going well between us recently, but to have an affair and a child— Wait, I just gave birth and was discharged from the hospital? We were supposed to be happy together from now on. That day was the very day I had returned from the hospital after giving birth. We were supposed to live happily as a family with our newborn. Why did this happen? I hesitated about telling you today since you just got out of the hospital, but I think it's better to tell you sooner. Besides, she's pushing me to get a divorce soon," he said with a smirk. His eyes were no longer looking towards a future with our family. Tears spilled over due to my husband's betrayal. "What about your mother? How will you explain it to her?" "Oh, my mom? She agrees with the divorce and thinks my new girlfriend is better," he said. "What?" I swallowed a big lump in my throat. "I see. That's what it was. That explains the strange behavior of my mother-in-law. So please leave the house. I own this house. Preferably go back to your parents' house by tomorrow. I've already told Mom you'll be leaving tomorrow." "What about your daughter? She's your flesh and blood too, isn't she? Right, the child. But I already have another child now, so I'll leave her upbringing to you. We'll talk about child support and property division later. Is that all for now? I'm busy, he finished. With that, my husband began to stuff my belongings into trash bags and left them by the front door. It seemed he was in a hurry to kick me out, and so the divorce proceeded unilaterally. A few days later, I negotiated the division of assets and child support through a lawyer. It all totaled up to $80,000, but my husband didn't seem particularly perturbed. That amount is fine. I'll pay it all at once, so please don't bother us, he said, half-jokingly laughing. I was surprised that he could afford to pay in one lump sum. Although I wondered where he had managed to get such funds, I was relieved that I no longer had to deal with him. Yes, I have no interest in you or your mistress anymore. Just one thing. I want you and her never to come near me and my daughter again. If you can't do that, know that I have my own ways to deal with it. My husband frowned slightly and agreed, "That's fine." A week later, he transferred the money into my account as promised. Thus, our marriage abruptly came to an end. 5 years have passed since then, and I am now 35 years old. My daughter, born during that tumultuous time, is already 5 and will be starting elementary school next year. After the divorce, I moved back to my parents' house with my daughter and am still living with them. With the support of my family, I resumed my career as a nurse after giving birth. Life is busy, but with my lovely daughter, each day is enjoyable. One day, while in a large shopping mall, I accidentally ran into him, the last person I wanted to encounter. "Hey, isn't that Diana? Long time no see," he said. I heard the voice of my ex-husband, the last person I wanted to meet. I gasped in surprise. "What's with that reaction? You've aged, haven't you? By the way, how have you been since the divorce? It must have been tough being a single mother." He started talking as if he were a stranger. His words were shockingly insensitive. "You abandoned us, didn't you?" While suppressing the anger welling up inside me, I retorted sarcastically, "Thanks to my family's support, there was no problem at all without you." "What are you pretending for? Your father, that small-town doctor, right? You couldn't have relied on them." My ex-husband laughed mockingly. His sneering words made my anger rise and my hands trembled. I wanted to hit this terrible man right then and there, but I knew that wouldn't change anything. Unpleasant memories from the past flashed through my mind, and I fell silent. While I remained quiet, he began bragging about his current life. "After we split, I married a female doctor. She's incomparable to a part-timer like you. My wife is capable and 10 years younger than me. We live a wealthy, stable life. Jealous? Sorry, I'm the only one happy here." His high-handed attitude was accompanied by a loud, rude laugh. Hearing this, I understood why he was able to pay such a substantial amount in child support and property division at the time of our divorce. It must have been because his affair was discovered, and the father of his mistress must have handled it. Foon, that's good for you. That's why I could pay the money immediately. Once my mother found out my mistress was rich, she quickly agreed to the divorce. So that was it. It was surprising not just that my ex-husband would behave this way, but that my mother-in-law had been influenced by money. "Oh, which hospital does your wife work at? Interested?" "She works at Richardson Hospital. It's a newly established, well-known medical center. You've worked in hospitals before. You must have heard of it. Richardson Hospital." Ha ha ha. I couldn't help but smile at my ex-husband's confident speech. That hospital is a place very familiar to me. Fate really is ironic, isn't it? Yes, I know that hospital very well. After all, it's my father's hospital. Your wife, she's working at my father's hospital. Huh, what? Your father owns that? Yes, he started it a few years ago with the help of a friend. Remember my maiden name, Richardson. Wait, your father is the director. Yes, he is my father. That's ridiculous. I knew my wife had recently moved there, but I had no idea that the director of such a big hospital was your father. But I still had questions. Your wife, she recently transferred to Richardson Hospital.
Right.
Well, yes. I can't believe it. But your wife's name is Claudia Harris, isn't it? How do you know my wife's name? It was an unbelievable fact. That Claudia Harris was my ex-husband's mistress was hard to believe. With such a common surname as Harris, I hadn't made the connection before. It's ironic, isn't it, how fate works? I no longer harbored any attachment or resentment towards my ex-husband, but the past betrayal deserved some reckoning. I decided to reveal the truth about his current wife. I also work at Richardson Hospital, and I know about Ms. Harris. She came to us a year ago after a scandal involving an affair with a married patient at her previous job. An affair with a married patient. Weren't you aware? Sorry, but that incident is quite well known at our hospital. It was revealed at her previous hospital that she had a relationship with a young patient, which caused a huge uproar with his wife. It was settled amicably, but you didn't know about that. No way, Claudia. Doing such things. My ex-husband turned pale, seemingly stunned. He seemed to recall something, muttering, really, at that time. So that time as well, come to think of it, right after Ms. Harris transferred, I remember a girlfriend of a male high school student who was hospitalized started yelling in the hospital room that Dr. Harris had harassed her boyfriend. Going after a high school student, that's really something. There are rumors she likes younger guys. What? What does that mean? Affairs with married patients harassing high school students? And to think Claudia doesn't do anything with me. That's strange. No, I don't care about her not doing anything with me right now. It's utterly incomprehensible. My ex-husband was clearly confused and overwhelmed by the revelations. It was an indescribable scene. It's funny, isn't it? Didn't even know about it. Maybe she lost interest because you've gotten older. Or perhaps with all the lovers she has, she doesn't need you anymore. Just like someone else from your past, both of you have a preference for younger ones. I said while struggling to hold back my laughter. My ex-husband couldn't say anything, just stood there dumbfounded. Later, I decided to share an update about my current situation with my ex-husband. Actually, I have a new partner now. He's a doctor at Richardson Hospital, a wonderful man. My father really likes him too. My daughter is almost old enough to start school and she's absolutely adorable. He treats her very well, and we are filled with happiness every day. Sorry for being so happy, I told him. Unable to hide his irritation, my ex-husband countered, "There's no way my wife would do such a thing." But I just quietly walked away. What goes around comes around indeed. After the birth of our daughter, my ex-husband left me to marry a young and attractive doctor. However, his new wife had her own issues, often engaging in affairs with younger men. Had my ex-husband not spoken to me at the mall that day, I might never have learned her secrets. It's ironic. 2 months later, Claudia Harris had to change her workplace again due to a harassment issue. She wasn't stripped of her medical license, but was forced to transfer due to inappropriate behavior towards young patients. The hospital's investigation revealed multiple incidents of harassment, with patients reporting, "Dr. Harris persistently touched me, and she asked to touch my body. As the director, my father decided to transfer her to avoid any further damage to the hospital. After her transfer was confirmed, my ex-husband, realizing the truth of what I had told him, confronted her. This led her to admit the affairs and harassment, and after a fierce argument, they ended up divorcing. Their child stayed with Claudia, and my ex-husband started a new life with his mother. Meanwhile, I live each day feeling blessed with a loving partner, adorable children, and supportive parents. Actions always come back to you. I am committed to living honestly and correctly moving forward.